Thank you for joining us on the eve of Mobility Week as we unveil our first zero-emission, all-electric bus to go into Lynx operations. Mobility Week is a statewide celebration of promoting safer, more efficient transportation choices and an ideal time to think about how we can improve multimodal options to reduce traffic congestion and benefit the environment and improve public health. Exciting to cut the ribbon on Station 9, serving the Rosemont neighborhood. And along with being the home of some of the very best firefighters Orlando has to offer and having some of the best equipment, Station 9 was also built with firefighters' health and safety first and foremost. So the station was designed to promote diversity and inclusion in the workplace and includes private individual crew bunk rooms, showers and restrooms, and a secure room for special uses such as nursing.
Trailing Thoughts from Shingle Creek Trail. I've never seen more animals on a bike ride. Is that another water bird? They're like mini seaplanes. Imagine having the power of flight, only to spend so much of your day underwater. That's got to be really confusing and terrifying to the fish.
months, almost 2 years ago, Justin, our general manager, was meeting with PKZ and the fantastic program of Black Bee Honey. We had a tasting in the room over there. We loved the product, we loved the story, and we decided that right away we want to be partner with them. We want to be working with them and take the product to the next level and make it known to the public.
I've been waiting for this for weeks. I gotta tell you, I am so ready to do this. I even have the bed ready. What? So when you get home, we can get really dirty.
Gotta go.
Hey! Here you go. With all this compost, we're gonna have the best plants in the neighborhood.
Good morning. It's nice to see a full council chamber. Must be a good workshop we have today. So welcome to the September 26, 2022 workshop of the Orlando City Council. Commissioners, as you know, we've been focused on the revitalization of downtown for many years. And I remember when I first took office, we've invested and built world-class signature community venues like the Dr. Phillips Center, the Amway Arena, Amway Center. We've added green space, Constitution Green, Luminary Green, which we just opened, expanded Lake Eola Park, and we have a brand new campus of both UCF and Valencia in our downtown. So we've created a downtown that's not just for business and environment, but for people. And it is truly a pivotal time in our downtown. We want a downtown for the future, a great downtown, but a downtown that serves as a true neighborhood. So like we've done before, we're setting a vision. We're being very thoughtful as we plan the next course of evolution in our downtown. You'll hear an update today from the DDB CRA and our project team about the efforts and the work they're doing on the Downtown Action Plan. This plan builds on the investments that we've made, the gateway projects we've done, and takes us to the next level as we go block by block, looking at every sidewalk, every street, every light, every space in our downtown. And these aren't simply shiny big projects, but they're critical things that good cities do when we're planning to create a better, more interesting place. Great downtowns don't just happen, and that's why we're here to discuss our vision and our plan and implement efforts to make it a great downtown. So David Barilla, would you open the workshop for us?
Absolutely. Good morning. Good morning. Can everybody hear me? No?
You're good.
Okay.
David, I think you're good.
Am I good? Okay. Well, great. Well, again, good morning, Mayor, Commissioners, and community members.
Better.
Even better. You see, I just had a loud voice. I was projecting, Mayor. That's all that was happening. So good morning. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is David Barilla. I am the Assistant Director of your Community Redevelopment Agency and Downtown Development Board. So, Commissioners, in December of last year, we came before you with a contract, and that was to engage the group that we have with us today. It's led by Perkins and Will, Nelson and Nygaard, and that was to start the work on what was then called our Downtown Master Plan. That is now referred to as Project DTO 2.0, which is why you see this logo before you today. So your support has brought us to this point where I'm really ecstatic not only to introduce you to this world-class team, but also to provide an update on the status of all the work we've been doing earlier this year. And the various initiatives, as you heard the mayor mention, that we've been working on, ultimately to plot the course, to bring the visions, to bring the projects, to bring the actionable steps needed to continue to transform downtown to what Mayor Dyer has charged us to be, the highest quality urban environment in the nation. So as we begin, I just want to point anybody in the audience to this link. It will lead you to a copy of this presentation so you can follow along on your personal device and make it a bit easier to view. I'll give you just a second to copy that in if you'd like. All right. So we can't talk about where we are today without talking about Project DTO. Thomas and I were just talking about sitting in this room back in 2014 when we launched that project. As you'll recall, Project DTO was a comprehensive, community-inspired, and community-driven visioning process, where more than 6,000 Orlandoans came together and directly engaged, directly strategized, and directly envisioned the next chapter in downtown Orlando. In addition, they were augmented by an amalgamation of 9 task forces with more than 71 community members, each focusing on a strategic subject area, with the entire initiative led by an executive advisory committee with some of Orlando's most inspiring and influential leaders. I am proud to say that many of them join us this morning in this room. You will recall some key recommendations of Project DTO included enhancing our mobility networks and our parks and open spaces. The mayor mentioned some of that work that's already been done. Recharging downtown with corporate anchors and high-wage, high-value jobs. Expanding housing options and encouraging architecture that creates a signature skyline, just to name a few. That brings us to today and Project DTO 2.0, which is the formal initiative to take a number of those big ideas, those big visions, those big dreams, and bring them forward into a structured and implementable action plan that not only enhances their characteristics in data-based research and design, but brings them to reality. So the focus area of this initiative is on the core of our downtown, or the central business district, as it is often referred to. It encompasses approximately 509 acres and presents key opportunities at continuing the award-winning work started with our North Quarter Transportation Plan through our central city. It is envisioned that with successful implementation of many of these concepts, we will look to continue this work and expand this approach to additional parts of our downtown and CRA. The focus areas of Project DTO 2.0 that you will hear the team present today are not only strategic, but also comprehensive. For though we had the opportunity to tackle each of these subjects in just individual and direct ways, you authorized us to take a comprehensive approach to ensure that the actions directed by this plan yield dynamic, subject area knitting strategies that unlock downtown's potential and long-term success. The team will discuss our streets as we look to transform them and our right-of-way to potentially unique and uniform design that promotes walkability and sustainability, our civic spaces to create strategic amenities and opportunities for our community to congregate and celebrate, our mobility options for not only vehicles, but all forms of mobility, including pedestrians, bicycles, and the like. And finally, districts, which plan to create and celebrate the unique characteristics of each segment of our downtown and provide a framework for them to advance into inspiring neighborhoods with street-level amenities, unique cultural experiences, and thriving local businesses. And within each of these areas, we are thinking of everyone, taking justice, equity, and inclusion into account every step of the way. So as we begin, I want to introduce you to the city team that's leading this initiative along with our consultants. Our executive leadership team needs no introduction. It is Kevin Edmonds, our Chief Administrative Officer, F.J. Flynn, our Deputy Chief Administrative Officer, Brooke Bonnet, our Director of Economic Development, Tanya Wilder, our Director of Transportation, and Elizabeth Dang, our Planning Division Manager. From our DDB and CRA, we obviously have our Executive Director, Thomas C. Chapman Jr., and myself. And the core project team, who has the responsibility of working with our consultants on a weekly and often daily basis. From our DDB CRA, outside of myself, we have Mary Stewart Droege and Kelly Allen. And from the City of Orlando's Planning Department, we have Jason Burton, Douglas Metzger, Transportation, Christina Martin, Cade Broad, and Gustavo Castro, as well as Scott Zollers, Corey Knight from our Public Works Department, and Michelle Beeman Robinson from the Fire Department. So that brings us to our consultant team. The logos you see before you represent our entire team. I'll introduce you just briefly to some of our larger consultant teams and our leads that are here before us today. Perkins & Will is an international research-based design firm founded on the belief that design has the power to transform lives and enhance communities. Nelson & Nygaard is a national transportation planning firm that creates more vibrant, sustainable, and accessible communities through improved street networks. JLPD specializes in assessing the economics of our experience of place. And Jeff Speck is an internationally regarded author and walkable cities expert who specializes in economically transforming cities into safe, walkable, and vibrant city centers. You also see a number of local firms that bring invaluable local knowledge and resources to the table. And now, for the individuals who you will get a chance to meet, I'll start with our two representatives from Perkins & Will. We have Cassie Branham, who is our principal in charge, and I can assure you she works that title very well. Cassie is a principal at Perkins & Will and co-leads their global urban design practice for the firm. Her background is in interior design, architecture, city planning, and graphic design. Fun fact is she actually is somewhat of a local. She graduated from Lake Brantley, right up the street. I don't mention her college alma mater because we have slight disagreements. I'm a Gator, you can infer where she may have went. We have Jeff Williams from Perkins & Will as well. He is our urban design lead. He is also a principal there. Jeff has led projects for diverse clients at every scale, from new clients to groundbreaking urban regeneration. His work includes long-range city building initiatives for institutions and local governments, as well as planning and design sites for rapid urban transformation for commercial real estate developers. His background is in architecture and city regional planning. Cassie and Jeff, they're somewhat of a team, so they've worked together on cities like Atlanta, Washington, D.C., and Charlotte, all of which we all know and I'm sure love parts of with. Jeff is a Gator, so I can mention where he went. Allison Fletcher is our transportation lead with Nelson & Nygaard. Allison is a principal at Nelson & Nygaard. She has worked with cities of all sizes across the country and specializes in multimodal transportation planning, street design, safety analysis, and linking mobility to urban planning and design needs. She serves as the chair of the Boston chapter of the Association of Pedestrian and Bike Professionals, and she co-leads the National Active Transportation Sector for Nelson & Nygaard. I happen to know she also bikes to work almost every day, so she wears that hat well. And finally, James Lima, who's our retail and land use lead. James is the president of JLPD. He's a national leader in the transformation of urban environments. He has led downtown revitalization, economic development, land use planning, and mixed-use corridor reinvestment in cities throughout North America, including New York, Atlanta, and Austin. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to our principal in charge, Cassie.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you for having us. So we have a lot of information to walk you through, and we're very excited to be here to be able to walk you through all of it. So as David mentioned, let me pull this out. Our team has been at work since late February of this year, and we've been working very hard. That there is a lot to learn about downtown Orlando. Some of us have worked here before, some of us have visited the city, but really getting into the DNA of the city, and as Mayor Dyer described, getting down to what is the individual streetlight, individual tree, individual brick, and really understanding this downtown from kind of that scale all the way up to the larger scale, and how this knits within the larger city and the region has been near and dear to our hearts. We started with a walkable city audit, which you may or may not have heard this term before, but it means that our team, which is not only the 4 of us, but many, many others, over 20 people, came down to Orlando, and we spent a week walking the city, walking every single street, collecting data, and you can see on these pictures, measuring things, trying to understand what are the dimensions of the curbs, how are people using the streets, how are people experiencing the city at all times of day. So we were out at 8 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 10 o'clock at night, really understanding how the city is performing in different ways. We were documenting our findings and trying to really understand the organism of Orlando, of downtown Orlando. All of this data came together into quite a robust system of data collection. We've collected, as you can see here, over 25,000 data points, with 20 people out there on the ground, in the field with iPhones and iPads, actually keying things in, collecting from the desktop at home, and then putting this all together into a form that we could really do a data-driven analysis of where the city is today based on the vision of where you want to go. Sorry, I'm going to try to move the keyboard out so I'm not going back and forth. In addition to this, we also did, I would consider to be more of a qualitative assessment. So while we were doing quantitative and analytics on one side, on the other side, we've reviewed all of your past plans for the city, the study area, current plans you have going, and really worked to understand what Project DTO is about and what you've done since then. There's been tremendous successes in the city, and how do we continue to grow on those? And so this has all come together into a series of findings that we want to walk you through today to really understand your take on things and make sure that we're reading this city correctly and that our initial impressions are headed in the right direction. Before we get to that, though, we think it's really important to kind of step back and talk about the role of downtowns. What is the role that downtowns need to play, and why is this important as a way to kind of benchmark where you are and where we think you should be going? Okay, so downtowns, they should be, I'll put it that way, they should be the heart of cities and regions. They should be a place for everyone to come together. They should be a place that the community across a region looks to as their civic destination, somewhere where you go to, see lights during the holidays, you go for fall festivals, you come together to mourn, you come together to celebrate, you come together in all different ways as a community. And that is the pleasure and the treasure of a downtown. It's also important for economic development. They're economic engines for regions. And on top of all of that, they should be a place for people to live every day. And when you put all that together, the best way to describe it is that a downtown must thrive. It must be a thriving place to accomplish everything that I just went through. And so to help us kind of benchmark what it means to thrive, we've gone through a process of actually outlining different kind of points that downtowns must accomplish. So they must be a neighborhood for the whole city. They must be welcoming and relevant to everyone. They must have locals in mind, and visitors will like that because they're serving, sustained by locals. A hub of arts and culture. And you can see at the bottom left-hand corner on these, a lot of these images are downtown Orlando today. You're already doing these things. So we're trying to look for, what are you doing and where are there opportunities to expand. A regional magnet, economically, socially, and politically. A place where people want to live and have a variety of quality housing choices for a range of people. A place where businesses can thrive, from large corporations to small local businesses. All of these images that we're seeing here are local businesses here in downtown, I would say in the downtown area, is reflective of the history of the place, has a social infrastructure that elevates civic life, has a vibrant street life both night and day, and has beloved civic spaces that are actually networked into the street fabric of the city, have connections to other districts and are stronger because of those connections, and are safe, pleasant, and fun, and have unexpected experiences that kind of once you want to kind of keep going back to see what's going to happen next. They offer an array of evening leisure and entertainment options for everyone, and a whole host of family-friendly activities. And they're nurtured by district management organizations that focus on business, art, culture, and placemaking. And they're inclusive and transparent for how they work with citizens to kind of participate in their evolution and where they go. And I think that this is an important slide, and you'll notice that this is the same image that David actually started with. This is one of the images from Project DTO, that you guys are doing some of these things quite well. And in our assessment, what we're finding is that you're there, you can get to this thriving downtown. There's just a few things that we need to work on in order to kind of get you to that next level. So how do you measure up? So there, as I was saying, there's opportunities and there are challenges. On one hand, you'll see the first one of these, I'm not going to go through them in detail, that downtown has strong bones. Other downtowns in this country would kill to have the street framework that you have. You have an amazing network of streets. You have amazing opportunities for people to move around and have an active civic experience. On the flip side, the way those streets are designed are not always for that active civic street life. And so is there a way that we can redesign the streets in order to encourage that? And we're going to get into some of those details in a few minutes. And so our team has developed, based on all of kind of our research, all of our analytical findings, 5 kind of core planning principles that we wanted to share with you and get your feedback on today. With each of these principles, we have a host of strategies that my colleagues are going to walk you through. First and foremost, downtown should be a place for all people. Maybe we should have capitalized it on this slide. It's very important. It's a place for everyone. Downtown should be personified by a vital street system and transit network. The streets are the backbone of a city, and they must be vital, they must be functional, and they must work with transit in a way that encourages movement and encourages people to experience places. They should be exceptional every day. Downtown should be a neighborhood of diverse districts and corridors. And kind of at the largest scale, downtown needs to be a cultural hub for the region. And so based on the idea of a thriving place, these are opportunities that we see for downtown Orlando to kind of merge into the future. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to James, Jeff, and Allison to walk us through each of these principles in more detail and the strategies that we've been thinking about. Thank you.
Thanks, Cassie. Good morning, everyone. I'm James Lima. I had the pleasure of just returning from the International Downtown Association annual conference in Vancouver. It's for an organization that Orlando has really been a leader, and Thomas Chapman's been very involved, and congratulations, Orlando received a prestigious award at that annual gathering of place management organization leaders. So you're already doing a lot of things well. But it was clear from that convening that across North America, downtowns that have been traditional business improvement districts, central business districts, are pivoting to become much more diverse, mixed-use lifestyle centers, if you will, places of vibrant activities for everyone. Cassie talked about this being a downtown as a place for people, for all people. We'll start with the people, right? So first, it's this idea that our competitive advantage as a place, our ability to attract and retain people, to attract investment, to continue to grow as a community and as an economy, is really dependent on our individual and our collective experience of place. In that way, every one of us here in the room is an expert at great place, right? Because we know the places we want to return to again and again based on our experience of them. So how do we create a set of experiences of your place that continues to raise the bar, that continues to create rewards, if you will, as we move through your downtown, to say, yeah, I want to keep going back there because I keep discovering things, I keep finding these rewards. I feel welcome there. I feel that it's relevant to my daily life. And I think that is one of the big opportunities for a downtown for people, and specifically for all people, is how, as a city, as a downtown district manager, can the public, private, not-for-profit, civic sectors all come together and say, we're going to keep doing better to find ways in partnership to make this a place for everyone. And so one of the ways to do that is to make sure that we've got more feet on the street. And you are doing that already in encouraging residential development in your downtown. That is one of the biggest trends we're seeing throughout North America. And one of the challenges and opportunities here and elsewhere is, like, how do we find the financing tools and the investment strategies and the partners with the capability and the resources to create housing and services for everyone, for the whole spectrum of need. And I think that is one of the big opportunities and challenges, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, is that you are not a downtown that's fully built out. And so there are going to be new opportunities going forward, and we've identified many sites where additional development is possible, where you have the chance to make a policy choice to create mixed income, mixed use development that enhances and builds upon what you've already done today. And how do we find the financing tools to do that with tax credits and bond financing and and look at examples of best-in-class cases throughout the state of Florida and beyond to make sure that we're providing for what's the greatest need, but where maybe there are products that don't currently exist in your downtown. We talk about that coveted cohort of young professionals, and we want to make sure that there are housing choices for them. We also want to make sure that as we become an increasingly service-oriented knowledge and innovation economy, that we and continue to grow as a hospitality economy, that we have affordable and workforce housing options for people who need it. So that's a really critical piece. So part of our recommendations, again, we're at kind of a middle juncture in this process, will be for us to make specific recommendations and to shine a light on best-in-class examples of where you can follow certain precedents, be creative in your financing mechanisms, but also in your collaborations with people who are really providing high-quality housing choices for all, and in some cases, special needs housing for seniors. We have a booming population of older adults. I will very soon be in that cohort, and then special needs populations, which is a struggle across cities throughout North America, and it was a big part of the conversation the past week. So we are happy to be able to bring some of those resources and some of those best practices in addressing that issue. And again, the other big theme at the International Downtown Association was how are we addressing the needs to continue to create an experience of our downtown that both in reality and perception is safe. And that's for everyone and for all times of day and night. And again, here's where the unsung heroes of place management and of our downtowns across the country is our downtown managers, right? So how can we, as a group, use those resources and those best practices to make sure that we're creating vibrancy, attractive, appealing places that really spur what I call the economics of relevance. What does that mean? you have lots of main streets around the region and throughout the city. And we want you to continue to invest in all of them, but we really encourage you not to think of them as competing with each other, but rather that the core downtown really invests in being a part of a larger network. And so how do we make sure that we're creating places that are vibrant and vital, but are part of a larger network? And with that, I will pass it off to Jeff.
Thank you, and good morning. So we're going to wade into the weeds a little bit here for a minute. That while we're trying to make downtown a place for all people, that we have to start somewhere, right? And we have to start first by making downtown a place for even one person. And so here's what we know. That there are urban environments that work for people at a very fundamental level, and there are environments that do not. People want to feel safe. This is a very hot climate in Orlando. They want to feel comfortable in the shade, protected from the weather. That when they walk through the city, that there's a likelihood that they might encounter other people along their walks, that they're enclosed by spaces, so buildings, and that there are activities in those buildings, and that you have the likelihood of actually seeing a person inside those buildings as you're walking down the street. There's research that helps support this. And so Cassie mentioned this in the introduction, but we spent a week here, and we spent a lot of time on our feet, walking every street in downtown, every sidewalk in downtown, and we used our phones, and we collected a lot of information. The thesis here is that this is the old adage that what you measure is what you value. And one of the things that this project will leave behind is a legacy of valuing the qualities that people experience in the urban environment. Here there are 25,000 data points we collected. So literally, we walked every single tree in downtown, every curb ramp, we documented. And using some analytical tools, this is boiled way down for you. But we took all of those data points and we glued them together or aggregated them by your street corridors and judged them on an international scale based on a couple of different qualities. One is just the structure. How fine grain is the walk? Can someone walk through downtown just physically? Is there a structure that allows someone to walk your streets? The second one is about active edges, that when you're walking along a street, is there likely to be businesses and things around you? And the last one, might you feel safe? Might you feel comfortable, and is there an interesting experience of architecture and art and other pieces of activation in the public realm? Short story is, your structure is really exceptional. By any measure, you're registering very green on these maps. A lot of cities have removed streets. A lot of cities have torn down their historic buildings, and there is a good fabric in Orlando. In activation and in terms of experience, there's some room for us to work on. If you boil all these three together, there are some streets that are really quite lovely. This is my own photograph of Pine Street in the heart of your historic district, in front of a great coffee shop. A historic sidewalk, outdoor dining, and you can see a lot of the qualities that people value when they're walking around cities. There are places, though, where we, particularly as outsiders, sometimes it's hard to see your own home, and as outsiders, we see some things, and there are places where we say there's a mismatch between the spaces of your city and what you're trying to be. And this, orange, this is in front of one of your finest hotels, in front of City Hall. And when you dig a little bit in the image, you see some things. You see, a piece of bus infrastructure that's not holding any vehicle in this image. You see a cyclist who was heading south on Orange and encountered a contraflow transit lane, and now they're walking their bike down the sidewalk. You see legacy infrastructure, but you also see just the sun blasting onto that sidewalk. So it's very hot there a lot of the time. So we measured we went out and counted all your trees. There's about 3,100 street trees in downtown Orlando. About 1,000 of those are palm trees, which are beautiful but don't provide very robust shade for a pedestrian. And there's about 30% of your walking surfaces in downtown are covered by shade. We think just aspirationally that we could double that number and create a very pleasant environment to walk in. That when you think of other hot cities, and these are some of my own photographs from Mexico City, but a city full of shade, a city full of dappled light. That this is an environment that at one level people would like to walk through. There are other streets in important places, and so this is Roslyn next to Lake Eola Park, and we're looking north, and a couple of things that I won't tell you what you do see in this image, but a few things that you don't see are any street trees. And so if you were expecting a visitor to go and cross Roslyn and walk into Lake Eola Park, that they have to cross a huge expanse of sun-exposed pavement. There's also, if you look closely, there are also not pedestrian street lights along this, and so this is at the edge of downtown, and so there's some room to improve street lighting. We mapped the street lights over the walking surface of downtown, and we think that, like shade, that there's some room for us to improve. So a blanket of shade during the day and a blanket of light at night. And light, not only is it something that makes people feel safe and comfortable in the urban environment, but it's also something magical in cities. And sometimes the best experience of a city is at night. And think of London, and here there are some images in Melbourne, Australia, that has done a lot of work on its public realm, and even St. Petersburg, an event of light at night. Soho in London, and we think this is an area that we can contribute to downtown through that. Shade and light these are elements of sidewalks. These are features that you find in sidewalks, and we've done a careful study of your downtown sidewalks. You have a patchwork of sidewalks, and this is what people first experience. And of course, we're looking at the qualities of those sidewalks. Are they broken? Is there universal access? And so we're documenting that. And but we're also looking at it just in terms of the visual environment and the ease of maintenance over the long term. And so presently in the study area that we're looking at, there are 7 different types of sidewalks, 5 treatments. Gertrude's Walk is its own thing, and then there's some streets that aren't classified. And when we look at each of those classifications, so here are images of those 5, we feel like for an area that's not even quite a square mile, that 7 different things it feels a little too much, and some of these are a little maybe over over the line in terms of their complexity in construction and their ease of maintenance, lots of pavers and lots of banding. And we think that this palette can and probably should be simplified, and so that's something that we're in the process of studying. And so we have this patchwork, and we have all of these different types, and so we also measured how many streetscapes are presently in compliance with the standards, and we understand that sidewalks get built as they get built. But I think this leaves us a lot of room, this only 33% compliance, to think broadly about the sidewalks in downtown. So the long story short, we think there's the ability maybe to have one basic sidewalk that's much easier to maintain, presents a very clean, classic city sidewalk appearance, and that's something that we're working through in subsequent stages of the project. So while we're being good for people, we think it's also important for us to look at the way that infrastructure relates to the natural environment here in downtown Orlando. So we need to do good while being good. There's a very direct relationship between the quality of your lakes that surround downtown, the water quality, and the downtown infrastructure. That water it goes down the street, it flows into inlets, and it's dropped into your lakes. And along the way, it takes other things with it, nutrients and pollutants. And so we think that there's a way for us, when we're looking at all other changes that may occur within streets, to also look at infrastructure that may help us clean the water, and looking at the edges of some of your lakes, particularly Lake Lucerne, as an opportunity to enhance the natural environment that creates a context for this downtown that's unique in this country, and has been embraced from the early days of planning in Orlando. And so we're looking at, for a structure that unifies the human spaces of downtown and the streets that people value, but also looks at a network of streets and public spaces that are unified with the natural environment.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the impression of place that comes through the street network within downtown itself. That value of making sure that this is a place for people through how it's also functioning in terms of how people get there, how they move around it itself. As Jeff was mentioning, we've walked all the streets. We have a lot of transportation data as well, both from just all the GIS systems you have, but also what we collected with our feet all over downtown. And one thing that's very clear to us, and is something that many downtowns across America are looking at, is what role the one-way streets are doing in terms of the impression and feel that they leave in the downtown. Right now, that's definitely one of the most dominant characteristics and presences in the downtown, and that has a very high level of service for throughput within a downtown, but it creates a lower quality of experience for people that might be walking, biking, taking transit in the downtown, having intuitive navigation, especially for people that are not necessarily local from here, understanding the system, knowing where to go, feeling less stress as they're trying to navigate the downtown. And studies show that it's less inviting for drop-in commerce and making a convenient stop within the downtown. Also digging into some of your census data, we've noticed some surprising trends that are very different from other downtowns that we're seeing that are doing infill development, that between 2014, when the last vision plan was completed, and now your drive-alone mode share of people that reside within the downtown and work within the downtown has gone from 75% to 93%. So there's a trend of even more people driving within the downtown. But the good news in terms of what we're seeing is that there's a lot of opportunity for change. Our partners at VHB are also here today helping us with a traffic analysis for this project. And when we look at a movement analysis, looking at the volume to capacity ratios, where you see all of these green lines in the map on the left, we're seeing a lot of opportunity for transformation. So we want to make sure that we're critically examining what are we doing with that capacity for change. We also looked at streetlight data. The map on the right is showing trends of these pink lines where they're thicker is showing when people are coming into the downtown, are they traveling to somewhere within the downtown, or are they just passing through and going out the other side? This data also documented that not only are like 15 to 20% of people just traversing all the way through the downtown and using the local surface streets, but they're also driving extra miles that they don't need to drive within the downtown, going really far out of their way. Using this one-way street system, they're kind of going down, being ping-ponged and back around, and they're getting lost, and the streetlight data is actually evidencing that in the data that we see. So thinking about what makes great streets for people, what constitutes a vital downtown street system, some of those key components are integrating the street network itself with this relationship with space and place, reinforcing all of these comfort qualities that Jeff was getting into, making sure that there's also a blended and complementary vision between all the different ways. We have a great biking system, we have a great transit system, we have a great system for continuing to get through in the car and finding a place to park, but that they're all going together and complementing and reinforcing a stronger network, and it's not necessarily siloing all those different visions. And in order to catalyze this type of vision, we need to start with making sure that it's a great place for people to walk within the downtown. So some of the sub-principles within that, one of those is that we need to make sure that we're transforming many of these car-oriented one-way streets into walkable, people-oriented two-way streets. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this lens of a way of looking at the streets. The classic paradigm of evaluating the success of streets is using what we call LOS, or level of service, where you give a functional classification based on things like speed and other ways that people are getting through the downtown. But when we look at streets from an economics perspective, a street that might have a level of service A in a traffic engineer's mind is like Amelia right here, which has very easy flow and throughput for cars, which has a service A. But from an economist perspective, that has an F, because there's not a lot of foot traffic happening there. There's not a lot of vitality, whereas that is the inverse when we think of streets that are the kind of streets that we want to have within downtown areas. In much of the data we also saw a lot of opportunity in mapping. This is a map on the right of the sheds for walking, biking, and transiting to the downtown. We see a lot of opportunity in terms of the density of people that are within those sheds, and that a lot more short trips could happen through other means, or you could come here and have more of a park once environment. You don't have to necessarily keep moving your car within the downtown as you go to things throughout the day. So within these one-way to two-way transformations, some of the pros and cons of these different systems, you'd think that one-way streets are not necessarily good for visibility of businesses. You have storefront visibility of somebody traversing the downtown only in one direction, which leads to circling back, as you can see in the map on the left, going a little bit further, having to go through 3 times as many intersections, 3 times as much delay, much more conflicts within the downtown. Having two-way street systems doubles the storefront visibility, it's more customer friendly, and it mitigates this unnecessary circulating traffic within the downtown. From an actual safety perspective, having multi-lane one-way streets leads to more speeding. Lots of studies reinforce this. Also, having multiple lanes leads to the need for more signals, which leads to more management and more different complicated systems that are being managed within the downtown. Also, when people are driving within a one-way system, they're conditioned to look at the other street that they're approaching only in one direction. Okay, the cars are coming from that direction, I'm gonna look in that direction. Within a two-way system, when you're approaching an intersection, you're conditioned to look in all directions. You're seeing people walking and biking within the downtown, and there's inherently an attitude and a climate of sharing the streets and the intersections more so. From an emergency and fire service access perspective, in a one-way system, obviously you only have one way of approaching things for access. Two-way system doubles the amount of routes and avenues that someone can traverse the downtown when they're trying to get to rescues. In a bicycle perspective, you also have a thing where if you're going to be biking the downtown, you're going to have to go twice as far. That's a big deterrent to cycling within a downtown. If I'm going to have to go through 3 times as many intersections and all the risks that go with that and trying to get where I need to go, and then you have people on bicycles probably doing things that you don't want them to do in the downtown to try to shorten those trips. But having a two-way system is not only better for all the other users, but especially also for people that are making these short human-powered trips. And from a walking perspective, when we get those cars slowing down, when we have more sharing in the street, this is just going to reduce the stress and the climate of the downtown and create a much easier climate for the ease of crossing a given street and making sure that you can get somewhere where you need to go while also being seen and feeling safe. Another sub-principle within making these streets better for people is looking at the streets in a different perspective. So thinking about like a hierarchy of streets. This street is for this type of movement, et cetera, but we want to think a little bit further in terms of how this ties to place. Which streets are really about movement? They're getting people here and there. This might be like Garland, Which streets are about access? You have a lot of business and commerce. You really need access to the curb. You have loading. You have people who need to go make short trips. Some people need to stay a little bit longer. And you have this variety of dynamic access to the curb and movement. You have some streets like Magnolia, which we really want to re-envision as a place that is for place and that you're hanging out. There's trees, there's comfort, there's lots of things to do, places to linger. And you have streets like Roslyn, which are probably going to be a blend of both movement and access, just given the way that the north and south streets flow in the downtown. We're still thinking through what this means in terms of corridor identities for the east-west streets, but you need to have kind of a pattern of streets that are for place and movement and access, so it's not like all streets for movement all next to each other, and we're beginning to shift the perspective in terms of how that influences the hierarchy of which we make decisions about what happens where on given streets within the downtown. Within the weeds of thinking through the system, we also need to make sure you're doing a great job already with the downtown loop and other things that you're doing. You have an amazing citywide bike plan, but how does that citywide bike plan play out within the downtown itself? Where are those facilities? Which streets are key for that? Jeff had a map earlier about which ones provide the most key connections to and from downtown, east and west, but we need to make sure that there's legibility and predictability in terms of where the biking system is, and that it's a biking system for people of all ages and abilities to walk and cycle within the downtown. Good bike network planning principles within a downtown that we're going to be trying to put through our strategies here is making sure that we have one of these such type facilities every 2 to 3 blocks. That's kind of in the thesis of biking about how far people are willing to go to and from out of their way to navigate within a downtown and make sure that there's predictable access. Making sure that there's a lot of trails that are connecting to and from the downtown and that we're looking at those gap closures, thinking through where some of this critical infrastructure can stitch things together. And then the good news is also that if we are converting one-way streets to two-way, and we also might look at realigning where transit is routing today, that might open a lot of opportunities for thinking differently about where people cycling can get to and from the downtown itself. So talking about transit, we are looking very critically at what's going on with both the Lynx routes and the limo routes within the downtown and examining what role exactly that limo is playing in the transit ecosystem of downtown. One thing we found when looking at the patterns of how many buses are going down a given street, which is the map on the left, so the thicker the line, the more buses that are going down those particular street segments, and the map on the right, which is about passenger loads, which is how many people are actually on those buses as you're going, there's actually quite a bit of a mismatch between where the buses are and where the passengers are actually riding. And then there's an even further mismatch between where there's actually dedicated service facilities, such as dedicated transit lanes on those particular streets. They're carrying very few riders. So we're seeing some opportunities to look through what might that mean in terms of some redesign opportunities for making sure that transit's actually connecting densities of people where they need to go. So when our look at limo, we want to make sure that limo itself has a clear purpose, it's got a clear user group that's using it, and then we're maximizing its utility within downtown and the evolution and the planning of all the other pieces that we're thinking about, that we're making sure that it's integrated within links. You have tons and tons of other links routes as well, and we're making sure that there's not duplication, that it's complementing those in a distinct way, and that we're following best practice with a lot of downtowns are transforming their circulators to think of a more intuitive, direct, simple alignment that might be going back and forth on the same street on a select number of streets rather than circulating and wiggling on different blocks. So we're still thinking through what that might look like, but I'm gonna pass it back to Jeff to talk more about other facets of the downtown.
I was reminded this morning when we were coming through security downstairs that there are these two, Catherine Freeman's two beautiful paintings. When you come through security here, the murals that face one another. We can think about downtowns in terms of their exceptional activities, and certainly you've done this better than most. There are unparalleled destinations in your downtown. But like Catherine Freeman's paintings downstairs that illustrate sort of an everyday experience of Orlandoans that is elevated, this is an area of focus for this project. And here we're talking about trying to marry the kinds of places that draw people from around the region into downtown with a constellation of amenities for people that might live here in downtown. And this is, it's easy for us to think of the festivals and concerts and swans and all of the things that downtowns are known for. But if there are in the future going to be thousands of downtown residents, they need some place to take their dogs, they need some place to take their children, and they need a constellation of amenities to support their daily life. We think there are the kinds of places that attract a visitor to downtown and may also help support local residents or people that work or live in downtown. There are a handful of these places already. Certainly, the progress that's been made on Luminary Green, calls attention to that in this map. But there's, like an archipelago that runs across the middle of your downtown of these everyday and exceptional places. But as when you're looking at that map, you notice in the north and the south that there are gaps. That we think that there's some work that needs to be done with Lake Lucerne to elevate it as a public space. The answers there we're still pondering, but also with redevelopment potential in the northern portion of downtown, we think there needs to be a real anchor there. And these anchors sit within a matrix of other great places that surround downtown. And so when we're thinking about downtown, we're really thinking about a contiguous fabric of the city in the center. And when we think about connectivity of downtown to the surrounding areas, that there's a series of these gateway spaces that don't present a particularly kind or inviting voice for the importance of downtown within the region. The under 408 space is an example of that. And so we're looking at these gateway spaces as an opportunity to greet people into downtown, but also thinking about the exceptional everyday as an anchoring system for a downtown of neighborhoods. So downtown is, yes, a neighborhood for the region, but the downtown isn't one, it's not one place, it's not one homogeneous downtown the way that we think of like the archetype of a central business district. And we've been trying to tease out what some of those differences are. And so some of the data that I shared with you in the beginning, we've taken that and used that as a metric of the fabric of the city. And you can see the darker the green here, the higher performing in terms of the number of building uses that you might find along a street, the coverage of those, and the scale, its walkability. So we looked at it through that lens. We looked at trying to find areas of downtown where there's likely to be change. One of the features of a lot of downtowns is there's a lot of municipal property, a lot of religious property that is slower over time to change, and so we wanted to be conscious of that. And then there are sites that are either in development or underutilized or vacant properties, and you can see the clustering of those. When we overlay that, and this is it takes a second to see this, but there are sort of districts. There's an area of the city south of Livingston that goes all the way to Church. That's your historic district. That's the highest quality urban blocks that you have. Also the lowest likelihood of change. In the northern area of our study around the Sentinel site, you have lots of vacant lots, very low quality blocks in their present form. There are also a high likelihood of change in that district. And so we've started to think of this, where are there quality places and where is there likelihood of change. There are districts that start to present themselves. So the first two we think are obvious. This is our nomenclature. We're not speaking on behalf of any of the business communities here, but there's Orlando Central, the historic district, grounded by Heritage Square. We have, what a lot of people think of as downtown proper. There's, a city hall, there's an event facility across the lawn with Senef Plaza and Dr. Phillips. You have an anchor in the downtown. But then there are these other spaces. So I mentioned the Lucerne Gateway, that with a little bit of attention to that space, that has the potential of anchoring a southern district, with attention in around the Sentinel site, that you have the opportunity of a whole new sub-neighborhood within downtown. And we can't forget about the boundaries that exist along the perimeter of downtown, particularly with I-4 and its connections west to Paramore, that we're thinking of this as a bridge district, and it needs concerted energy in making it feel comfortable for people to move back and forth across the city, and for this to be a contiguous place. When we're thinking about districts, we're digesting the downtown into walkable zones. And so a series of walks that people can take from place to place to place through the downtown at distances that feel comfortable. And so with this, we think that downtown has the potential with your cultivation to become a series of neighborhoods with their own distinct identities of Midtown and the Central District, like a Greenwich Village of Orlando, and the Bridge District, using the infrastructure that's there to become a more interesting and exciting place. Downtown, the civic destination that every city needs, and Lake Lucerne, a neighborhood around a lake.
Wow, so that's a lot, right? So time for a deep breath. It's really helpful to have Jeff talk about a series of districts and neighborhoods to kind of break it down. But first, before I talk about what we used to think of as retail and now think of as ground floor real estate, just want to first kind of recap that our goal is to create an overall environment that makes this a really compelling place for more people to live. That at a time when people have never had more choices of where to live and work, to kind of double down on the compelling case for why this city center is a great place for commerce, a great place for business, a great place for your workers to want to come together in community and connection and sophisticated urban cultural amenities. And in doing those things, in creating great streets and great cafe life and shade and all the places that we think of as really competing, as the best places to attract even more visitors. Orlando as a region is understood globally to be one of the most creative places in the world. And I'll talk about that some more in a minute. But you attract something on the order of 75 million people to this region. It's an incredible number. If we just got an extra 3% of that 75 million, that'd be another 2.1 million people coming to downtown. So how do we say, yes, do all these other world-class attractions, these family-friendly events, but come have an authentic downtown experience also as part of that week or 10 days or whatever time you're spending here? That's an enormous potential change. So if we have more people living downtown, more people working in new and different hybrid ways downtown, and more visitors, then we can really talk about the transformation of how we use those ground floor spaces. And it really is inextricably linked to all the other things that we're working on right now. We just don't have time to get into everything, but like the ease of parking, the addressing questions of regulation and permitting for small businesses, of the catalytic and transformative effect of great, shady, walkable streets that are accessible and easy to get through. And the role that the DDB-CRA can play as the choreographer of the district, of the manager, of the constituent services provider for the entrepreneur, the small business who's struggling. You know, it's a lot of work to run a small business. Like, how do we, in a retail way, help you have the resources and the infrastructure to understand what's possible? So in thinking about a place that has a mix of uses and is vibrant and diverse and inclusive, that creates activation, but particularly new and expanded opportunities for, you know, BIPOC entrepreneurs in our center city. What does that look like, and how is it an interdependency with all these other great things that are likely to happen? So we'll look forward to coming back with some specific solutions on that. And then this idea of transforming key corridors and supporting redevelopment. Despite the comprehensiveness of all this plan, you can't do it all, at least not in the short and medium term. A lot of these are very long-term plans, and you don't need to do it all. We think it's helpful and really kind of an imperative to identify key corridors, the most catalytic, transformative things that we can do, that we can help you say, in the next 3 years, in the next 5 years, what are the things that we can really turn around? And so there'll be targeted focus on Church Street, where there's so many things in play now, but where we really need to have conversations both on the government side, on the private developer owner side, and really understand, like, what's the greatest opportunity, what are some of the barriers, what are the opportunities. But as we start to think about the identities and the opportunities of distinct sub-districts in the downtown, it's also an opportunity to think about how to better connect the assets you already have, these incredible investments you've made in Creative Village, in the other destination attractions, in the economic, social, and cultural hubs. And so thinking about what those links are, you know, under I-4, et cetera, are critical. It's also worth noting that you're not a fully built out downtown. You have a significant number of development sites. And so as we think about all of these goals, all of these principles, all of these opportunities, how can the city help shape what each of those projects contributes to civic life? What is the most important, the ground floor, the street level experience of each new project that comes, you know, through your process of approval? How do we make sure that that makes the most civic contribution and reinforces all the things that you've invested in? I spend a lot of time making the case for economic investments, both public sector, philanthropic, civic, private, in arts and culture. Doesn't really sound like a role for an economic advisor, but we think it's probably one of the most significant attributes of a globally competitive city. And again, I just want to reiterate, you already are an internationally understood center of creativity. I mean, is there a place in the world that anyone thinks of that is more creative than the place that turned the marshlands into the most beloved place in America? And so you already have a creative infrastructure. You already have creative talent of all sorts working in the region. How do we take that creative energy and have the DNA of your region manifest itself and be more legible in your downtown? Traditionally, downtowns are the very center of the creative energy, the creative institutions, the creative hubs, the affordable spaces that government and philanthropy and others have to set an intention to create for long-term affordable access to and participation in culture for everyone. So you've been extremely effective and extremely good at creating big projects, right? You've got stadias and arenas and a world-class performing arts center. What we think is a great complement to that, and the timing is terrific for, as we reimagine what city centers are and where we live and work and choose to play, is the more fine-grained, smaller scale, I would say informal arts and culture that is basically saying, take the whole ecosystem that already is in your region and give it a home downtown. Think of it as this opportunity we have right now to create a new and expanded artificial reef. We're getting the framework in place because there are a whole lot of tropical fish out there. And it doesn't matter who they are. They are going to come and you're going to create a happy place for them to populate. And that will change over time and it doesn't matter. But the point is, you're creating a framework that is hospitable and what I think of as nurturing. And the nurturing often comes from the downtown district managers, the place management organizations that are here on the ground. In your case, you know, finding the resources necessary to make sure that in a retail way that we overlay a process to expand galleries, expand affordable creative spaces and maker spaces, to possibly even establish a defined cultural district that is a more formalized cultural district that has all the attributes of affordable artist housing, affordable workspace. But even, you know, I've said this before, the other cities we work in would do almost anything to have electronic arts as one of their great anchors in their downtown, and you have them. So there's this creative energy on the private side, on the business side, on your university side, in the not-for-profit community, and in the big regional employers. How to bring that all together with the most hospitable and attractive ecosystem so that is legible and understood to be one of the key attributes of your downtown. And if downtown is in fact the place the region envisions as its civic heart, there's an enormous economic potential of that, in addition to the obvious social and cultural value of that. So we look forward to continuing to develop the economic argument for why those investments are both valuable but really strategic. And as cities and downtowns compete for people who've never had more choices, an imperative. And I think with that, I'm going to turn it to Thomas Chapman.
Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. So as we move toward a conclusion, let me first take you back a moment so that we can then go forward. I'm going to take you back to a previous slide that outlined the 5 planning principles of Project DTO 2.0 and emphasize that, as you can see here, the downtown DTO has to be a place, or should be a place, for everybody, for all people. A place with a vital street system and a transit and transit network. It should be exceptional every single day, offering unexpected experiences. Downtown should be a neighborhood that embraces its diverse districts and corridors. And finally, downtown should be the cultural hub of the region. Also, I want to take you back to the mission of Project DTO 2.0. For downtown Orlando's long-term success, which we are all obviously committed to, we must prioritize our future as a thriving downtown. And I want to insert this phrase, and I will repeat it several times. Day and night. We must be vibrant, day and night. We must be walkable, day and night. We must be economically viable, daytime and nighttime. And lastly, but not least, we must become the cultural destination day and night for Orlandians, for Central Floridians, and as James was just talking about, and as we all know, if we do this well and really, really do it right, to a larger component of that 75 million people or so that choose to visit the Orlando area on an annual basis. To achieve that mission, we know that we must offer a greater variety of experiences in downtown Orlando, day and night. Therefore, at the direction of Mayor Dyer, staff has already begun working on a proposal to achieve that goal by providing a diverse array of amenities, events, and activities, day and night, large and small, with varying frequencies throughout downtown Orlando. Additionally, the leadership and senior staff of the Economic Development Department is contemplating an innovative, targeted business outreach and recruitment strategy in order to achieve an optimal tenant profile and product mix throughout downtown Orlando. Obviously, we will continue to collaborate with this wonderful team of Project DTO 2.0 and ensure that we align with its findings. So what's next? Phase 1, we can check. This team is obviously understands the study area, as you can see, and has identified opportunities and challenges. Phase 2, we're deeply immersed into and starting to finalize the strategies, focusing on dreaming big while developing various frameworks and strategies. Next, we get a little more granular, moving into the details, really focusing on the details of developing concepts for projects, policies, and programs, as well as for an action plan, a plan of action to achieve that. And finally, the team will focus on documenting its recommendations into an equitable, implementation-driven plan. Mayor, I want to remind you and point out to others that in a very intense meeting about 15 months ago with senior staff, you charged us to remain laser-focused on achieving a safe and optimal downtown Orlando. I want to assure you and the rest of this council that in those 15 months, not 1 week has gone by where there has not been one and usually several meetings involving senior staff focused on this very matter. Mayor, we are laser focused. We're certainly engaged. I also want to remind you that in this very room in 2014, as we launched Project DTO, Advancing Downtown Orlando, again, Mayor, you charged about 100 stakeholder volunteers, I should say, because we didn't pay them, many of whom are with us today, as well as about 30 staff members. And I'll never forget the quote: to chart the path to become the highest quality urban environment in the nation, right here in downtown Orlando. It is my sincere hope, Mayor and Commissioners, ladies and gentlemen, that this presentation is demonstrative and proof positive that significant and substantial work continues as we strive to achieve that very lofty goal. So get engaged. Stay with us. You'll see that our projectdto.com, as David mentioned, has launched earlier today. You can help downtown Orlando not only become a safe place, but a thriving place. You can go there and learn and plan with us through weekly activities that will be shared on the website, and that website will offer educational as well as interactive opportunities. After this workshop, your team will avail themselves on the 9th floor for further interaction. And right now, Mayor, thank you all. I want to thank you all for your attention this morning. This concludes our presentation, and of course the team would be more than happy to respond to any questions that you might have. Thank you very much.
Fantastic, Thomas. So I think one summation is great downtowns don't just happen. A lot of work has to go on, and I think it was important for people to understand how much work has been going on, largely behind the scenes. But Thomas, could you, when we did our best practices mission trip 2 weeks ago, last week, sometime, to Denver, there were 70 or 80 members of the public that were extremely excited about participating and offering advice related to the downtown. Could somebody come up, David or Thomas, specifically, how do people get engaged? It's one thing to say get engaged. I guess go up to the 9th floor after this meeting is one quick, immediate way, but talk about how.
Yeah, absolutely, Mayor. If they're here today, absolutely. We will all be up on the 9th floor. We'll have some refreshments. The team will be there. Our staff will be there. We would love to engage. There's maps on the wall. This presentation is also posted, and you'll get the opportunity to see things more closely and have detailed conversations. We're also always available to that extent directly. I think many of them know how to contact us. But throughout this process, the website is our portal. As Thomas mentioned, not only to ultimately learn about all the various steps moving forward, but to directly engage with both city staff, DDBCRA staff, as well as the consulting team, and be invited to various types of activities that are coming up throughout the coming months, and when we look to kind of culminate things early next year.
Thank you. I don't see any speaker requests up there. Does that mean everybody just wants to digest this and talk about it later? Okay, that is great. You're getting off the hook without any questions or comments. I don't know that that's ever happened in the history of the 19 years that I've been mayor. So, wow, what a great presentation. So thank you very much. And we will stand adjourned. We'll take just a 2-minute recess and then go into our agenda review meeting.